everybody, it's Betsy, and here's what's in the Popping Collars feed for June 2021. There's just 2 words for this month's Popping Collars, staff picks. Hear what we're recommending from the world of pop culture. We have a special interview with Academy Award nominee Tomm Moore this month. He talks to Greg about his animated feature, Wolfwalkers. The Going on 30 mob movie marathon continues this month. Greg and I explore the Martin Scorsese classic, Goodfellas. Finally, The Sacred Six wraps up our deep dive into The Wire. Special guest Eric Matoyer discusses the series finale, simply titled 30. Thanks for listening, and keep those collars popped.
Everybody, my name is Greg Knight, and I occasionally have conversations with pop culture creators. This is one of those. So grab your favorite snack, warm blanket, let the discussion fill your world. This month, I got the chance to talk to Tomm Moore, the writer and co-director of a film called Wolfwalkers. Letterboxd.com says, in a time of superstition and magic, when wolves are seen as demonic and nature and evil to be tamed, a young apprentice hunter comes to Ireland with her father to wipe out the last pack. But when she saves a wild native girl, their friendship leads her to discover the world of the Wolfwalkers and transforms her into the very thing her father is tasked to destroy. I'll tell you that this is an animated film that's brought to you by the same production company that created The Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea. And just like those offerings, this film features some of the most mesmerizing hand-drawn visuals you'll see on film. So what inspired the story for this 2021 Best Animated Feature nominee? Find out as we go under the stole with Tomm Moore. But first, here's the trailer.
Wolf, wolf, hunt them far and yonder.
The forest is brimming with wolves. It's my job to hunt them down, not yours.
But we could hunt them together. Wolves, bears, dragons even.
She's one of them Wolfwalkers.
Wolfwalkers?
Wait! The ones that can talk to wolves with some wild magic.
You can come out now. We can smell ya, you stink. You're a wolfwalker. You're a wolf when you sleep. What? A girl when you're awake. Robin! Something's happened to me. Yeah, I can see that. It's flippin' great. You're a wolf now. Be a wolf. The woods are getting smaller every day.
These wolves, they're just beasts.
Tonight we put an end to this.
I promise your mother I'd keep you safe.
I have to help her. You have to leave. No way. I'll scare them off.
Just kind of want to start with, instead of kind of rehashing your entire biography to get us to this point, like, what's the story from your life that stands out that made you think this is what I want to do with my life? I want to tell stories. I want to make movies. Like, what was it that happened that triggered that for you?
One that I often think of is when I was a kid, I was in a a birthday party, and they put on The Secret of Nim on VHS for the little kids, for like my friend's little sister, and I was just mesmerized by The Secret of Nim. And I remember sitting down, and at a certain point my friends were all laughing at me sitting down with the quote unquote little babies watching the cartoon, and I didn't care. I was like, let them go, I want to see this. I kept sitting watching the cartoon. So that might have been it.
That movie's wild. I mean, The Secret of Nim, like if you go back and watch it, I guess we're just so programmed for like Disney style animation, stuff like that having a story like Nim, it really does stand out.
And I grew up on all these weird dark movies. Like when I think what I thought was a kid's movie was like Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, Secret of Nim, Never Ending Story. You know, even E.T. deals with some heavy sort of divorce stuff and all. There's like a undertone that it's his dad not being around that's causing this sort of journey. So yeah, it's crazy. I grew up on some darker stuff.
It feels like so much of the oxygen in the world of animation is taken up by Disney and Pixar. How do you kind of think, how is Secret of Kells going to stand out? How is Song of the Sea going to stand out? How is Wolfwalkers going to stand out? How do you start to think about these projects as a unique take on the animated film?
Yeah, well, you're always in contrast and competition, whether you like it or not. And I have friends in Disney, Pixar, and they've been really supportive over the years. And I always felt that what they kind of were encouraging me to do was do something different. You know, there's no point copying them. There's no point. There is a certain kind of breed of independent animated feature that sort of makes its living by confusing kindly grandparents and parents that it might be a Pixar movie. But we decided to go the absolute opposite direction because we didn't want to be compared unfavorably, and we wanted to offer something, you know, authentically coming from where we're coming from and from ourselves. And we wanted to continue celebrating hand-drawn animation. And that's been a sort of on-off thing with Disney Pixar, whether or not they continue with hand-drawn, but we've kind of made it our mission. And we kind of wanted to tell stories that probably weren't going to get told by mainstream studios, even though I do feel like over the years it's evolved so much that I'm starting to be quite excited by the risks that the mainstream studios are taking. But I think in general, you want to offer something different. You want to stand out both in style and content.
Well, I mean, what stands out to me from the three features that I'm familiar with from your company is it leans into a few things, right? It leans into fable, sort of storytelling is fable, but also the fluidity of the image, right? So whether it's the calligraphy of Secret of Kells or the water in Song of the Sea, or in this film in Wolfwalkers, it's the trail, it's the scent trails and all of that stuff. Like, do you think in terms of fluidity for these movies, is that like a central part of how you kind of see the animation in your mind?
Yeah, well, I think animation, and particularly hand-drawn animation at its very basis, is often playing with transformation. It's usually what kids do first when they make a flip book. You know, they turn a face into something else, you know, and that's the sort of thing that I think is just at the basis of hand-drawn animation. It's what it excels at, playing with the kind of language of dreams, where things can kind of turn from one thing into another, and the way we transition from one image to another is playing with persistence of vision. So I feel like the stories and the approach to stories and the approach to animation are all very intertwined. Like, they're not like separate, like how will we do this? It all just sort of comes together, you know.
Let me ask you about Wolfwalkers in particular, because it feels like one of the major themes that comes out of this film is this sort of tension between freedom and constraint, which I think has sort of a, you know, obviously like a spiritual dimension to it, in the sort of the conflict between the woods and the town, right? And how those two worlds represent very different things. But it also made me think that as someone who directs animated movies, that's probably something that you deal with in the creative process too, right? Like, you have the freedom to imagine whatever, but you're constrained by what you can actually draw and the time that it takes to do it. Like, do you experience that kind of freedom and constraint when you make these?
Yeah, I think the balance it's in the core of drawing as well. Like I mean, I'm studying life drawing again at the moment, and the idea that you make these gestures and then you try and not lose the gesture when you impose structure and anatomy and stuff on top, or if you make a rough drawing and it has all the spirit in it, and then as you go through the stages to clean it up and to finalize it, you don't want to lose the life at the beginning of it, and it's the same with everything. It's the spark of a story, the inspiration doesn't get lost when you impose draft after draft of structure, and so getting that balance between the two is just part of the creative process, I suppose. And then with studio itself, there's kind of like, what is animation allowed to be and how far can we push against what animation is expected to be. And yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, it's such a big broad basic theme that I think it speaks to a lot of those things.
There's this clear sort of spirit that exists in the community of the wolves, in the woods, right? And all of the sort of mythological images that come with, just the woods as a trope in storytelling.
Yeah.
But then the town is about structure and order and religion, and and how do we take the spirit and put it into boxes?
The cage that we were thinking of for the town in Robin was a mind. It was in the mind. It was like in this culture that was coming in from England, this kind of Puritan culture that was trying to separate man from nature, had this idea that man had dominion over nature and that everyone had to follow these exact rules. Very literally, they were like, totally lost in this kind of dogma as a reaction to the excesses, I suppose, that had gone before. So it's really common, you see, in religion and in societies that they kind of waver between these, like becoming quite liberal and laid back and everything going, and then restrictive and becoming very fundamentalist about how they think about things. And so I suppose we were thinking about that as well, because it's a big part of the Irish experience, and a big part of the colonizing experience, being colonized, and a big part of what I think is a struggle for people spiritually now, where they feel disconnected from nature to the point that they're a bit at a loss as to what's wrong and why they're unhappy and why people are trying to reconnect with nature. It's interesting. It's a spirit of the times as well, but it seems very old as well.
It seems like, just based on your filmography, that's something that speaks to your soul, this idea of finding the divine in nature.
Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, I think he was, and he said that you find more in the woods amongst trees and rocks than in books or any other place. And we used that line, we gave it to Brother Aidan in Secret of Celts, and I think that was a certain Celtic spirituality that was more syncretic, that kind of built on a pagan animist worldview, and then Christianity came in and fitted into that. And it wasn't until the colonization and the Puritan kind of notion that man was separate and above nature that we kind of lost connection with that way of looking at the world. And I would say, when I look at mythology, when I look at indigenous beliefs around the world, that we need to return to a spiritual connection to the biosphere, because our disconnection from it is a big part of why we're in so much trouble.
Do you rely on, are there sort of Irish narratives that show up in your stories? Are these like 100% just kind of out of your mind, or do you lean on sort of things that you've heard before? Because there are like some elements of, like, I don't know, St. Francis and the Wolf of Gubbio, in this a little bit,
yeah. Well, this story is the Wolves of Ossory this from Kilkenny, where I grew up, and St. Patrick was preaching in Kilkenny, and some of the local people didn't want to convert, so they hid in the woods and howled like wolves, and so he kind of put a blessing or a curse on them that they would leave their bodies as wolves when they slept. So it's really connected to that folklore, nice. And that's where it comes from. I think that the structure is there in nature, but we would be arrogant to think that we could impose our structure on nature. We're the ones that are going to lose out in the end, taking that attitude. So yeah, I think that those notions of dominion and stuff can be quite dangerous when we take them outside of the spiritual realm and think that it's up to us to wipe out an entire species or something.
I do wonder, and this may be more of a distribution question, I don't know, but with the rise of streaming platforms like Netflix and Hulu, now Apple TV Plus, who's got this movie. It seems like there have been two big winners in my mind from all of these streaming services, and that's documentary films and animated films.
Wow.
Do you find that people are finding your work more now than when you first started?
Yeah, the reality was with Secret of Kells, we were only in, we were a small studio with a small distribution, and we were only in, specialist cinemas when we were released, like kind of art house cinemas. And then the DVDs weren't so easy to just pick up anywhere. We had DVDs out, but then most people were finding it online illegally. And now that there's actually good quality streaming where you can see it relatively easily, it's been a real benefit for kind of slightly off the beaten track animation. Slightly off the beaten track. You can find more people. Like even if there's only 5 people in every town in America, they all add up to an audience that you would never have reached if you only showed in New York and San Francisco or whatever. So that kind of thing streaming has been great for.
Yeah, I know. Kells was something that we found on Netflix like 10 years ago or something like that, and it was it was an eye opener. It was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was out there.
I think people stumbling across our movies on streaming services when streaming services started was the main sort of legal way that people saw our movies. And then as the streaming services rose and rose, it became a real, Apple TV Plus getting behind Wolfwalkers was like game changer in terms of the fact that like a pretty arty, pretty small, independent hand-drawn movie was getting this publicity that was on the scale of like a big CG blockbuster. It's been really, really interesting, and also strange because I've been in this little spare room for it all. I'd love to actually see those billboards or whatever that they're doing, and the people tell me there's ads on TV in the US and all too, so it's amazing. Yeah.
So where are you in Ireland right now?
Yeah, I'm in Kilkenny. I'm here.
How has the COVID experience been there? Pretty much
long lockdown, one after the other. We were doing well for a while, and then Christmas everybody just said screw it and went and hung out with their friends and family, and we just had this huge spike, and then ever since then we've been trying to get it back under control while we wait for a vaccine. My dad got vaccinated, my sister got vaccinated. She's a healthcare worker, he's over 73, so he's so they're vaccinated, so it feels like it's finally coming closer, but we're nowhere near as far along as England, for example.
So that makes, and I don't know. I'm more of a, I like the art. I don't necessarily know how I feel about awarding the art. Like I'm totally glad you're nominated because it gets your name out there and gets your movie out there, that kind of thing. But I imagine this sort of award season has been extremely different from what you're probably used to.
The benefit of it is undoubted, right? And it's great. But I also fundamentally find it strange that we run these elections after we finish our cartoons every year to have everyone vote. And mainly people are working in the industry. So you're kind of hoping to convince people to vote for one over another. And the industry is rife with, little cliques and everything. So it's a really strange game. But it does, to the broader audience, signify that your work is of value. And it does mean a lot to have your peers say, yes, this is an important piece of work. It's changed my life. On the other hand, you try and keep a little bit of a distance from it. But usually what I enjoy is getting out and meeting people. I've met friends. I've made friends. I've made friends with Pete Docter in Pixar, Jim Capobianco in Pixar, Brenda Chapman, different amazing artists that have helped me with my career, encouraged me. And this time it's all been Zoom. There's been no socializing, no, going to festivals, going to screenings or anything like that. So it is, pretty weird season, but sure, at least we can do it. Like a lot of industries are completely.
I'm glad you brought up Pete Docter because, obviously his stuff, I don't know, it feels like it stands out from a lot of the Pixar offerings as far as like, just, the things that he's trying to think through with like the soul and the mind and all of those different things. It makes me wonder, like, do you see the future of sort of the animated film as exploring more complex understandings of the human spirit, the mind, all of that stuff?
To me, animation is perfect for that. And like, if you look in the world of independent comic books and stuff, that's already happening. And it's so important that somebody like Pete is pushing it out in terms of mainstream, because for a long time, mainstream really kind of contented itself with pushing the art form in terms of performance, in terms of art direction, but the stories were very safe, you know. And Pete, he's basically within, because he's so talented, within the kind of studio system, within the big mainstream system, making kind of movies that I think are much more art house than people realize. And he kind of, he kind of sugars the pill well with a lot of, entertainment value and stuff. But it leads the way then, and it allows for us to go even further. Those of us in the independent space, we can say, well, they're exploring existential questions in Pixar. What can we offer? We're independent. Right. How much further can we go? Because, we've smaller budgets and much more artistic freedom, much less shareholder oversight or whatever. So it really does open up the question. When I saw Soul, it spoke to me because I'm also a middle-aged artist, and I know that feeling where you kind of stop and question everything. And I wrote to him about that. And I had double feelings. One hand, I was like, dang, he's going to win. And the other hand was like, wow, that's a great movie because it explores.
Yeah, I think it's wild. The animated features that are up for Best Animated at the Oscars this year. It's just like, wow, this is so far from sort of the Little Mermaid days. And
and the jokes haven't moved on. Like in the award ceremonies, the presenter, they don't watch them because they go, ha, cartoons, and it's crazy. We've got a cartoon category. And they don't realize the movies they're talking about are really going into some stuff that you don't usually see outside of independent movies. Yeah, it's interesting. All right.
Can I get you out of here on one last question? One of the things that we used to do at Popping Collars is we used to pick something from popular culture that's been standing out for us lately, whether it be music, movie, television, book. And we called it like our staff pick. We were thinking like a blockbuster video. And like if you had a shelf that you could put a piece of pop culture on, what would it be? If you had a blockbuster video shelf to put something up, what would you recommend to people?
Oh, there's a short film that's nominated for the Oscar this year called Genius Locky. And it was directed by a French guy, Adrien Mergeau. And talk about pushing the boat out for what animation can do. Go and check that out if you want to see. Like if Soul seems daring and exciting what animation can do, over there in the French short movie world, they're going Joycean, it's like it's in the language of, I don't know, a Jungian nightmare or something, but it's really beautiful. It's kind of a trip, but it's actually really beautiful exploration just of the Genius Locky is the spirit of a place. And Adrian was spending a lot of time like living in squats in Paris and contemplating this place has a spirit, this place has a life independent of the little tiny lives moving in and out of it all the time, and thinking about that. So it's a really interesting short. So I recommend people watch that. Yeah.
Oh. Tom, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And folks can find the movie on Apple TV Plus, correct?
That's where you can go. And it's in some cinemas now too. They're opening up the cinemas again over there. So I think G-Kids have it in cinemas here and there. So watch out for that too.
Very cool. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.